guys, Gideon here with Manna Entertainment. I'm back to let you guys know what is a personal dream of mine. All right. Now, I've heard rumors about this. I've seen it all over YouTube. All the YouTubers that I know, that I follow, all the gamers, they're all talking about it, and they're all saying it might happen. It would be cool if it happened, but they don't necessarily tell you how it's gonna happen. I mean, Super Metal Dave just posted a video that was kind of cool that said something along, and maybe by the time you're seeing this, it might have been last week. But he posted a video where he was looking at some of the job listings at Nintendo, and they were talking about the specifications that they're looking for to build a new SoC, a system on chip. You know, basically a new console or a new device. We don't know if it's a device, if it's a console. We don't know if it's. We do know actually by some of the descriptions that it is Switch related, but we don't know if it's actually a new portable Switch or what it is. So anyway, this I just want to restate for the camera and for everybody here on YouTube. I do not work at Nintendo. I do know some people that work at Nintendo, but we're not that close that they're going to go ahead and tell me secrets. And I'm not that crazy that I'm going to go ahead and reveal some secrets that are going to get those guys fired. So this is all just basically, this is what I would do if I was working at Nintendo and they were like, Gideon, we want you to come up with the next thing that we're going to do to be able to compete with the PS4, maybe even the PS5 and the Xbox One X and the next Xbox that comes out. And, basically what I would do, this is my idea, this is my plan, and this is what I want to bring to you, is the Switch Pro, and I have a mock-up here, so I'm going to try to show you the images of the little hand drawings that I did. I'm not an artist, okay, so FYI, if it doesn't look awesome, it's because I'm not an artist, but the concept hopefully is enough that you guys can see what I'm talking about here. So basically the idea that I have is, how do you make a more powerful Switch without pissing off everybody who already has a Nintendo Switch? That was one of the big problems that I've seen with Sony and Microsoft, and it's not really a problem financially for them because they are making money on these consoles. But as far as the fans are concerned, from a perspective of the fans, it was something that got me really mad that by the time I finally saved up the money to get the PS4, to get my PlayStation 4, which is the Call of Duty limited edition one or whatever, by the time I finally got the PS4, I was like, yay, finally, awesome, I got my PS4, woo, I'm going to play with my friends, all this kind of cool stuff. I'm just kidding, I don't have friends. But anyway, when I got my PS4, the point is, I was really pissed when not even a year later, they threw out a PS4 Pro that's $100 more and made my PS4 basically useless if I wanted to trade it in because I was going to get less than half of the price for the PS Pro. And I would have had to basically have bought a new console worth again to get the Pro. And I just got my PS4, and I was feeling like, this sucks. Like, I never had to do this with PS3 or Xbox 360. I'm a PC gamer too. I have, I have a pretty good Intel i7 4700, I think it is, K CPU, and I have a NVIDIA, the GeForce GTX 1080 Ti. And that video card is a beast. I have no problem running any current games at their max settings. I have been playing in 4K on my 4K TV that I have over there. It looks really awesome, but I actually do prefer playing in 2K at a locked 60 frames per second. That looks so much better in my opinion, but that's just a personal preference of mine. Anyway, so the Switch Pro, right? So what is it? The idea is, like you can see here, it's the Switch dock, but with a console that extends to the back. And basically, I'm also not a hardware engineer, so I know how to build computers, but I don't know how to actually put the best setups for heat and cooling and all that kind of stuff and efficiency. So this is just more imagination than it is. It's imagination with a little bit of research. So bear with me here. So basically, the console that you're seeing here would have all the ports necessary to play on any device. So you got your display port, your HDMI port, your DVI port, your AC power port, which is the same one that the Switch uses, and your audio optical out port. And the idea behind this one is that it's an actual console, right? You can dock the Switch in it. You can take the Switch games and put it in the cartridge slot, but you aren't actually playing from your Switch handheld. Your handheld is basically just charging there, and it lets you use the controllers, the existing controllers that you have, whether that is a Switch Pro controller, or whether that is the Joy-Cons that you have, or whatever other peripherals you have that might work with your Switch, would work natively with this machine. Now, how do we do that, right? You got to have a similar architecture and a similar like designed to what the Switch is to be able to work with it, right? PS4 Pro, actually Xbox One X. One of the criticisms that some developers have about it is that it has this super powerful GPU for a console, and it's limited by the bottleneck of its weaker CPU, right? So even though it can get much better graphics and better performance than the original vanilla Xbox, it still cannot get as much power as it should be able to get because of the limitations of the CPU. And they needed to do that because otherwise you need to kind of like reverse engineer all your back catalog of games to make them work on this console, on this new, Xbox One X. So how do I avoid that, right? So the technical specs that I came up with was for a GPU card, NVIDIA is using their own custom, version of the Tegra 1, I believe it is, X1. And NVIDIA, their video hardware is all basically based on the same technology. And I believe that one was based on Maxwell. But we see that, it doesn't matter if you're using 720, a GTX 720 or a 1080, it's still going to be able to run the same kind of games in the same kind of way. So because Nintendo actually went with NVIDIA and actually got the Switch to run on the Tegra, they should be able to easily use a GeForce GTX 1080 Ti. And if you look here at the chart that I'm showing here, basically you will see that the Ti outperforms the Xbox One X GPU by a considerable amount. So pipelines, it has 3584 versus 2560. The core clock speed is faster by about almost 250 megahertz. The transistor count is, it's 12 million compared to 7 million. Texture fill rate 354.4 compared to 187.5. And the floating point performance, this is what everybody gets excited about. This is like the bits of this generation. Like when it used to be 16-bit and then all of a sudden 32-bit came out and people lost their minds. So the Xbox One X can get a performance of 6 teraflops per second, whereas the 1080 Ti, what I have in my computer, it gets 11.34 teraflops per second. That's almost 2 times as powerful as the Xbox One X. All right. So what do these things do, right? Like what does the pipeline do in a GPU? So based on the quick research that I did, and again, if I'm wrong, feel free to correct me. It's cool. I won't take it personally, I promise. But the pipeline in a GPU, it creates a 3D model that translates to a 2D image. And it basically allows for higher, more detailed geometry, perspectives, etc. The transistor count, this basically reduces the CPU and the GPU bottlenecks. The higher the count, that it calculates 3 bits per transistor, ultimately allows better performance by allowing for more graphical speed and more things that can load on the screen, higher detailed 3D models, etc. So more characters, more things to play around with in the environment. The texture fill rate is actually, how many textured picture elements per second. So how many textures and how detailed the textures are can be loaded into a scene. The more textures you have, the more real something looks. It's like basically having real life compared to PlayStation 1. Stupid example, but whatever, just go with it. And what are actually teraflops, right? They're a trillion floating point operations per second, but in simple terms, it allows for a lot more computations, aka bigger, better, more complex game worlds. And then the RAM, right? So what kind of memory are we going to use? So the GTX 1080 Ti uses GDDR5X, whereas the Xbox One GPU uses GDDR5. Yeah, so I'll post a picture here of the RAM so you guys can check it out. Basically, you'll see that the 1080 Ti outperforms the Xbox One X on everything except for the memory bus width. So what's inside this console and what could it do? So according to the research that I did, industry standards for PC hardware is usually sold at 8 to 15% markup rates at stores. That's how they make their money, right? So they sell it to 8 to 15% more than what it actually cost them to buy it. And it depreciates at a rate of about 25% per year from the release date. So actually, if the stores, when you deal with manufacturers, you usually get cheaper prices because they make their money on selling it to the stores or to the console or PC or phone or whatever you want to think about, whatever you call it. They sell it to them at a cheaper rate so that they can afford to sell it to mass amounts of people. And they get their money in the upfront, and usually the manufacturers who get it or the stores that get it, they make their money towards the end. So hypothetically, right, if we were to start production of this Nintendo Switch Pro imaginary console that I came up with, if it starts production in 2020, meaning that's when we start putting all the pieces together, testing it, making sure that the wizards at Nintendo and at NVIDIA actually can make this thing work, to be released sometime in 2021. The hypothetical price breakdown and the choices that I would use for components is, my first CPU choice would be a Core i5 7500 Kaby Lake quad-core 3.4 GPU, right? 3.4 gigahertz CPU. Now, usually Xbox One X uses an 8-core 2.6 gigahertz AMD processor, but 4 cores in Intel usually outperforms 8 cores in an AMD CPU has been the tradition, right? Now, but if you want to know the math of how I'm getting the numbers that I'm going to show you, so to get this, it would cost $68.76 at the time. Now, back up a little bit. How do we get there? You take the original cost of release, which is $192. You subtract 15%, which is the markup, right? We're just assuming 15. 8 would have been a safer number, but I'm assuming 15. So we take away the 15% for the markup, and then we subtract 25% per year since it's been released. So it was released in January 2017, right? If we're starting production in 2020, basically the number you get after taking away the markup is $163. And then when you take away the 3 years of 25%, that's $68.76. So the CPU to get it into this console will cost Nintendo and Nvidia $68.76. Now, assuming that in all reality, they're unable to do that because sometimes the x86 architecture might not work with the ARM architecture and vice versa. I've seen it been done. I know it can be done. I don't know if it's cost effective for a company, so I don't know if they would go ahead and do this. But my realistic CPU choice would be a custom ARM 8-core Cortex A73. It's a 3 gigahertz processor. It's significantly more powerful than what's in the current Switch, but because it's an 8-core instead of a 4-core, it would be able to outperform what the Switch can do by at least 2 times. And it's a 3 gigahertz processor as opposed to I think the Switch uses, I had it written down and I don't seem to find it, but they used a weaker 1.75 gigahertz processor. So having a more powerful processor will, with ARM is cool because they'll be able to be on the same architecture, the same programming kernels that they use and everything like that. And ARM CPUs in general, even though they're typically for mobile, but if you get a powerful enough one or several ones that are working together, you can get very low watt and heat producing very efficient and very powerful CPUs, because this specific 8-core Cortex is compared to the Core i5 5700. And this would be the easiest choice for playing games on the Switch natively. So $68.76 for the CPU, right? And we're assuming just add $2 for that for the ARM, it was $70. And then for the GTX 1080 Ti, it was originally released at $699 with depreciation and 15% markup taken off and all that stuff after 3 years. It was released March 10, 2017. It would be around $250-$65, the most expensive component in the console by far. After that, I chose the Corsair Vengeance LPX 2.4 gigahertz DDR4 8 gigabytes RAM. 2 of them actually, so it's 16 gigabytes, which will cost $137.99, and then after depreciation and the math, $65.98. And then I chose a SSD hard drive from Samsung, Evo. It's the Evo 860 500 gigabytes SATA 3. It would end up costing them $42.19 to put into the console, and this would result in much faster load times. The BIOS and I'm sorry, not the BIOS. The OS of Nintendo Switch would load much quicker. Games would load much quicker. Even environments and things in the game would load much faster. Anything that's reliant on the hard drive will be so much faster, just on the fact that it's a solid state drive instead of a traditional hard drive, which most of the consoles use. And I wasn't sure what they would use for the motherboard, but just as a comparable, I used the MSI 7370 Gaming Plus motherboard, and it basically would cost them $52.60. So the base cost to build the hardware, not including the case and the fans, which usually is negligible at that point, would be $481.39. Nintendo could sell this as their premium hardware while they wait another 3 to 4 years to release a very powerful Switch 2 revision. And, they could do this like in 2024. And they can sell, coming out the gate in 2021, this console for $499.99, which is the price of the Xbox One X. So, coming out at this price, it would be way more powerful than the Xbox One X, probably comparable to whatever's in the PS5 and the next Xbox. And the cool thing is that it would already have the entire install base of the Switch would be able to use this, right? Because all it is it's allowing you to play more powerful games or more powerful or better looking, better performing versions of the games that already exist. One of the cool things Nintendo could do as a first party developer is they can go ahead and throw out, 4K patches or like 1080, 60 frames per second patches that let the game look more better and, and gives new life to the game without having to, sell you a new console, basically. Well, technically they're selling you a new console, but they wouldn't have to make you get rid of your Switch to do it. You can use all your original Switch library. It wouldn't go to waste. You wouldn't have to buy a new console. And there wouldn't be an issue of backwards compatibility because it's the same exact console. It's just way more powerful. And basically, Nintendo doing this, I think that would be the best decision for them because they could just wait and do a more powerful handheld Switch, which is probably what they're going to do if they're going to do that. But the reason I like the idea of having a console that you can dock your Switch on and just use the controls and everything and play much more powerfully is Switch owners, we come to expect the games to not look that great in handheld mode. And when they do, we're like, awesome, this is cool. But let's say developers have like a Switch version of the build and it's much lower looking, or less impressive than the PS4 or the Xbox versions. They can go ahead and have those versions for the handheld Switch, and then they can release their standard versions without having to do much work to the more powerful Switch console that I'm talking about, this Pro console hybrid that I came up with. And they will be able to do that without having to sacrifice their art and their hard work, making it work for these more powerful consoles. So this would give Nintendo an edge that they haven't had since the days of the GameCube, when they were comparably powerful to the Xbox. Xbox outperformed it because it had a hard drive and a couple other things. But to make a long story short, GameCube was the last time that Nintendo was competing with the power hitters, with the heavy hitters. They don't like to do that. They don't care about doing that. But I think it's smart for them. I think it would be smart for them to do. It's good business. It would be very intelligent because you just bring that entire install base over. You get to re-download your games onto the console. You get to put your actual cartridges into the console. I would buy it in a heartbeat. For $500, I would buy it. I would make sure that I go out of my way to get that thing. So anyway, that's my dream console. I don't know if it's going to happen. I hope it does. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. I'll put links to all the stuff where I found all of these things. And guys, thank you so much for watching the video. If you liked it, feel free to like and subscribe. And see you in the next video.